Okay, let's talk about goal setting and motivation. So I want you to keep those two in mind as we go through, because we're going to talk about some theories we've already talked about, but I want you to try to think of how they're connected to those two terms right there, goal setting and motivation. I also want you to reflect back on the previous activity of developing that hypothesis. So in the educational research module, we talked about setting up a hypothesis. Now we're going to try to set some goals that align to that hypothesis, and also think about motivation to try to achieve certain results. And I know that's not how a traditional experimental design goes. Like, you're normally trying to test that null hypothesis and see what the chances are of it being accepted or rejected. But we're doing it a little differently so that we can really link it up into common sense terms so that the average person can understand this. Somebody that doesn't do it every day. But think about those two terms right there, goal setting and motivation, and I'll try to help you link those up to what we're about to talk about. So, educational research, goal setting, quantitative measures. We created a hypothesis. I want you to try to see if you can set some goals to change those results in that hypothesis. Well, not necessarily change the hypothesis, but really to set some goals to stay on top of that experiment so that you can test your hypothesis. That's really what I'm getting at. It's not that we're trying to set goals to change the hypothesis. We're just trying to set goals so that we do what we set out in the hypothesis to see if we can get some reliable results. So that's why we're trying to set the goals. So data can help us make decisions, and it can be useful for program design, and it is really useful for goal attainment. So let's think real quick. I know in the previous module we talked about fitness, but anytime that you set a goal, right, you need to do it based on informed decisions. Why are you making that? Is this just right off the top of your head? And the reason that becomes important is you need to see if these are even realistic. Can you even do this? Is it even something that's worth your time? So let's think of a fitness program. Let's just look at weight loss. This is a good example that most people can relate to. If I go in and I take my weight and I look at it, I'm making informed decisions. So I know, okay, based on what most experts in the field, what most normative data tells me, let's just say I'm overweight. I could shed a couple pounds. So that's my informed decision. Then, based on that data that I collected, I'm going to create some goals from it. And those goals are going to help me develop a program that would help me achieve those goals. So that's what I'm talking about here. That's how that educational research piece is connected to the goal setting and motivation chapter that we're on right now. So let's talk a little bit about motivation and its link to popular learning theories. There are a bunch out there, and you can get bogged down in this. So let's not get bogged down in the weeds. Let's stick to those ones that we've actually already talked about and add one more to it so that we're not starting from scratch, right? Stuff that we have applied over and over and over in this class so that you can see how learning theory is not just theory. It can actually be applied and be effective in your educational career. So experiential learning theory is a big one. It's connected to that humanist, some of those humanist theories. So this is Dewey and Kolb. Dewey kind of made it popular, and Kolb kind of redefined it with his cycle, and we've talked about that before. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know that we've talked about it too much. I've mentioned it briefly, but we haven't spent a lot of time on it because I've kind of saved it for this chapter. So it is a newer one. We have mentioned it somewhat, but now we're really going to talk about it a little bit more. Self-actualization. Now, we have not spent a lot of time on this one. This one's really specific to this module, but androgyny. So pedagogy, andragogy, that's where we really have spent a lot of time on andragogy. So pedagogy, traditional form of teaching where the professor is the expert and they get up there and talk to you and tell you what's important. Andragogy is really important for adult learning, and it's really important for this class and all my classes. So the first day of the week, and you already know this, but I'm going to spend a little time on it, is pedagogy. There is a little andragogy in there, but it's more pedagogy. So the first day of the week is telling you what's important, getting everybody up to the same speed. That's the fastest way I can do it. It's efficient, right? I have a large class, 30-something people. It's faster for me to tell you in a big group and get everybody on the same page. Lecture notes help keep your attention, and then we'll do some sort of class activity, make sure that you can apply it, and that activity is going to be used in the next class, which is all andragogy, where it's more instructor facilitation. You already know what's important. You're showing me that you can apply it in those templates. So you're taking it, you're making a video, you're making an illustration about it, you're writing out a paragraph. We're trying to hit all those different learning styles. That's how it's been used in this class. And that's a form of experiential learning. All right, experiential learning, humanist and constructivist perspective, right? Learning through experience. Experience plays a big role in this type of learning. It is huge in the way I teach. I love experiential learning. I think it is one of the best ways to teach. So Kolb created a cycle. So individuals so he took what Dewey did, which was more of apprenticeships, talking about the importance of apprenticeships and learning by doing and all this modeling and teaching through those experiential methods. But he created a model. And so an individual goes out and they have this concrete experience. It doesn't matter what you're learning. You have this concrete experience. And then you sit back and make an observation. So you do something and then you observe what you did. You reflect on it. And then you think on it, right? Really abstract conceptualization. But let's put it in common sense terms. You did something. You observed it. You thought on it. And you created a plan. That's an active experimentation. And based on that plan, you may cycle that back to a new concrete experience, and then the process starts all over again. I do the same thing with the written pre and post test, right? You have this experience, we observe it, we think on it, I make a plan, I may make some changes to the class, and then we go back in and repeat the process again, and the process just starts all over. So you can see how this was even used in the course design. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now this is one that people have a difficult time understanding how it's applied to goal setting, but it is linked directly to it. I shouldn't say they have a difficult time. People just don't often make that connection, and it is very important when it comes to goal setting. So let's think of it this way. You have lower needs and higher needs. Let's just separate those two out into those two common terms or two common categories. So if you don't meet your lower needs, you can't even think about achieving your goals. Meeting those needs are your goals, right? At that time, you have to have those physiological needs or you're not going to survive. If I don't have food, water, shelter, I'm not going to survive. Have to meet those needs first. I can't think of going out, maybe I'm an artist. I can't think of drawing or making this sculpture if I can't even get food and water. Have to get those needs met first. Same thing with safety needs. Have to get my safety needs met before I can move on to these higher needs of love and belongingness and esteem needs and self-actualization, where I've actually, achieved the grand vision, achieved my goals. Getting up there to the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy. So I want you to think about early, elementary education. This is something we can link into what's a popular concern of the days, right? So we had children with their lunches being taken away because their parents didn't pay for it. If those lower needs are not met, they can't learn. They can't achieve their goals of learning. They're hungry. Their physiological needs are not being met. Nothing else is going to matter. So you're going to have behavioral problems. Because they're upset, they're hungry, they're aggravated. They have to have that food, that nourishment. Because they may not be getting it home. That could be their only meal. So that's why that's extremely important in early education, in elementary education. Those lunches need to be given out or they can't meet their goals. What's the purpose of them even being there, right? They can't learn. It's very difficult to learn when you're hungry. Just think how upset you get when you're hungry, right? It's very difficult to learn if you're not meeting those physiological needs. If you're sick and not taking care of yourself, you can't learn if you're sick, or it's very difficult to, and it's really setting you back. So that's how Maslow's plays into this. If you just think of it in common sense terms, don't get bogged down in the weeds in a lot of this stuff. Just look at lower needs, higher needs. If I don't meet my lower needs, I can't get up here to these higher needs that are going to allow me to grow physically and spiritually and mentally. I can't do that, right? I'm deficient here in these lower needs. Have to get those met first. Otherwise, I'm going to have no motivation to do anything else other than find food. So goals are connected to needs. I don't care who you are. You're not meeting those lower needs. Your goals have just become meeting those lower needs. Once you start getting hungry, once you start starving. So goals are connected to those needs. Once you can get those lower needs met, then you can start thinking of achieving goals and meeting those other needs. Behavior, needs, and goal setting. So a goal is simply just an individual consciously trying to do something. And I can't try to do something if I'm hungry. It's going to affect my behavior. I have to meet those needs. Otherwise, everything I do is going to meet those lower needs. So that's how these are all connected. Needs affect behavior. Behavior is going to affect your ability to achieve goals. Social cognitive research. So this is really more important. So this is Bandura. But this one's really more important in group learning and how you learn in group setting. So Bandura really believed that behavior played a key role in a person's ability to learn. So like Skinner, that made the Skinner box, he's more into operant conditioning. Same thing with Pavlov. A lot of these just thought conditioning was the most important part when it came to learning. But Bandura really focused on behavior. And we'll talk a little bit about how that really worked out in class, in that social cognitive research shows that you've got to get all group members to accept those goals, or otherwise you're not going to get any support from those group members. So you've probably seen this in your groups, like when we work on the templates. You may have some people just sitting around not doing anything. Maybe they didn't buy into what we were doing. Maybe they didn't buy into how the group kind of decided on how things were going to get done. Maybe they wanted to do the video and they're stuck doing the paragraph, or maybe they're stuck doing the illustration or the research, when in fact they didn't really want to do it. So if they're not truly bought in, and it may be no fault of your own, maybe they just didn't speak up and speak their mind. But if you don't have all group members accept those goals and support them, you're probably going to have a difficult time achieving anything. So you have to get everybody to buy in. And that's how it ties into the class and what we did on a daily basis. Cognitivist. It's very hard for me to say. That's why I had to kind of spell it out, right? Let's look at attribution theory. Warner. So this is important because this is going to tie in self-actualization It's going to tie in, and there are a lot of other theories linked. I just wanted, in case you were going to be into education, like that's going to be your major, that's why I link up a lot of these other theories we haven't used in here. I really only want to focus on the big ones I know that will be repeated, or theories that I knew that y'all could use in class and use throughout your educational career, even if you weren't an education major. So that's why I have some of these in bold, and some of them are just linked there so that you could see that, yes, these are also other related theories. Especially for those people that are going to major in education, you may see that stuff again. I didn't want to leave it out. But this is going to be more important when we start thinking of internal versus external, locus of control, attribution theory. Also ties in to motivation, self-actualization, and self-fulfilling prophecy, all of those. Okay, so that's what I want you to think about. Behavior is a big component. So, Werner really looked at having this observed behavior. The behavior is deliberate, and it's attributed to your internal, external causes. Remember those two terms, because that's really going to connect us. So this focus right here is behavior. The next part of attribution theory is achievement. So how much effort are you going to put into something? These are all related, even back to what I just mentioned. Your ability to do something, how hard is that for you to pick up this information? Is it easy? Is this something that's intuitive for you, or is this something that's just surface learning for you? Your ability to pick up the information plays a big role in it. The level of difficulty of the task, what I just mentioned, also plays in. And achievement's also related. Some will attribute that. That's your key there. What do you attribute your achievement to? Are you attributing it to your behavior? Are you attributing it to your effort, your ability, your level, or the level of task difficulty? Was it too hard for you? Was it way too easy and maybe you weren't motivated because of that? Or do you just think that it's attributed to luck? Were you just lucky? So behavior is attributed to locus of control, internal versus external locus of control. We'll talk about that in just a second. Stability, controllability, how much control did you have over the situation? And the relationship between self-concept and achievement is really important. So self-fulfilling prophecy. I see this one all the time. See it with my kids, see it with my students. Your prediction that directly or indirectly causes itself to become true. See it all the time with students that study. See it with my kids when they're trying to study. Oh, that teacher hates me. They don't even like me. That's why I'm doing poorly in the class. That prediction, and that professor may love that student, but that prediction causes them not to even study. So that's really where their performance is coming from, is their actual behavior. So that belief influenced their behavior. Or that subject's just really hard. I'm going to fail. I'm so bad at math. I'm going to fail. When in fact, they may be really good at math. Maybe they had a tough class, or maybe they have test anxiety. There could be a lot of other factors influencing their behavior. But because they have that prophecy, they don't even put the time or effort to even try to become good at math. Maybe somebody told them they were no good and they believed it. That belief influenced their behavior. Here's a good example. So when I was in junior high, or once I went into high school, you only had to have pre-algebra to graduate. I know you can't do that these days, but I felt I wasn't good at math. What it was is I had no motivation to learn math. I didn't like it. I never really even tried because it came easy to me at the lower levels. But anyway, so when I was in high school, I took fundamentals of math, consumer math, and pre-algebra, thinking I was no good, just using that belief, and it influenced my behavior. I didn't even try to become good at it. I was just lazy, right? I was just trying to find an excuse. Well, when I got to college, I had to take developmental courses because I'd never been exposed to it. But when I finally got into college algebra, because I had those developmental courses, they taught me what I needed to know for the college level. I was outperforming people that were in calculus. When I got into college algebra and trig, I was outperforming people that had advanced high school classes like calculus and trig and all these other advanced classes because I was taught at the college level. So I found out, you know what? I'm not bad at math. I just never put any effort into it. I didn't have any motivation, and I made excuses, and those all influenced my behavior. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I told myself that I was bad at it, and so therefore I directly didn't do things, and it indirectly caused it to become true. Directly and indirectly. So the moral of the story is, yes, that can really affect your performance. I like to say there are a lot of people that are uneducated. That's why they perform poorly. They're either uneducated because they didn't have the chance to become educated, or they didn't put in the time, or both. So that was my case. I was uneducated in math. It wasn't that I was bad at it. I was uneducated. It wasn't until I started paying for my education and I knew I only had one shot at it, right? When I started school, I didn't have anybody paying for it. I didn't start college until I was 23. I had one shot. And if it failed and I lost that Pell Grant, I wasn't getting another shot. And I had already worked out on patrol as a police officer. I had one shot, and I was really motivated, and I became good at a lot of things I thought I was bad at. I became like a Navy SEAL of education. I adapted to any situation. Didn't matter. Had a bad professor, I was going to be sitting right up there at the front of class. Didn't matter if they were the worst professor, I was going to learn from them. Anyway, I've got another story, but I won't. I'll leave that one for another time. So, locus of control. So, external, internal locus of control. External can really hurt you. Person who believes that their actions have little impact. Right? If you believe you can change anything, you'll do it. That's internal locus of control. You believe everything that happens, your actions are under your control. If you can take that belief, you'll be more successful in life. The people that focus on external locus of control, I failed that class because I had a bad professor. I failed that class because whatever. It's all everybody else's fault, right? And there may be some external factors that cause hiccups in your education. Just like this coronavirus, right? It's something that's kind of out of our control, but if we focus on our internal locus of control, of what we can control, we'll get through this, right? No matter what happens to you, focus on what you can control. Don't worry about those external factors. There are some things you cannot control. Do what you can deal with, and you'll do fine. So locus of control is very important. Most people just kind of blow this off when they see it. They don't see how they can actually apply it to their real lives. You can apply this stuff. It is super important. Internal, external locus of control. Motivation. What I just talked about has a lot to do with motivation. Intrinsic motivation. I am an intrinsic person. I don't want any external reward. So intrinsic means self-motivated. You push yourself to do things. You don't need money to do it. You don't need trophies to do it. You're going to do it because you enjoy doing it. That is me. So when I was in education, now there were times where I was focused on achievement learning, mainly because my education and my funding for my education was bound to my achievement. So I had to do well. But after a while, I kind of moved away from that. Once I started moving further up the food chain, I started really wanting to know the information. How can I really apply this? There's a reason why it keeps being repeated throughout my education. It's because it's important, and you can use it. When you hear people say, well, I never used it, it's because they never tried to use it. So intrinsic motivation is extremely important. Coming from a fitness background, right? Intrinsic motivation is more important than extrinsic. So extrinsic being rewards academic learners are just concerned about the grades, things like that. So here's how it plays out in real life, especially from a fitness perspective. And this is what I used to tell my classes. I had somebody come up to me and they're like, well, you don't yell at us when you're training us. I'm like, no, I don't, because you need that intrinsic motivation. I wait until those conversations happen because it's going to sink in when that person asks me that question. And the reason I don't yell at you is because when I'm gone, what are you going to do? How are you going to motivate yourself? If you haven't developed that intrinsic motivation, that desire to train and do what's right for the benefit, you're going to stop doing it once those extrinsic rewards are gone. So intrinsic motivation is more important for the long haul than extrinsic. Once that money's gone, are you going to be happy? Once those trophies are gone, are you going to be happy? Intrinsic motivation is more important. I'm not saying extrinsic doesn't work. It works exceptionally well with young children. It even works with adults, right? Some people are super motivated by money. But for me, I want that intrinsic reward. So we just talked about these. I won't go through those 2 slides. Trying not to make these any longer than a traditional lecture. So I'm shooting for between 30 and 40 minutes on how classes normally go. Because I know we got that 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning where we go over the quizzes and stuff and I give you feedback, and then we get going with the lectures. Once I hand out the lecture notes, lectures normally last between 30 and 40 minutes. And I always like to give you that 20-25 minutes for that 20 question graded quiz at the end. So that way you have a minute per question. So at least 20 minutes at the end. So that's how these classes work out. If anybody's watching these, trying to figure out what we do in class. Motivation and how it's related to learning theories. So we talked about Maslow's. Meeting those lower needs, self-actualization would be the end point, according to Maslow. According to Maslow, Rogers has a different idea on self-actualization, meaning that you're always striving, always trying to maintain, enhance the experience. So Maslow, right, has self-actualization at the top point. You've achieved your goals, right? You have achieved this gold standard. Not according to Rogers. It's continuous improvement according to Rogers. Even if you achieve that goal, it's just set you off for something else you want to improve. You are trying to reach those higher levels of achievement throughout life. You're always maintaining, enhancing, trying to change that experience, that life experience through learning, education, what have you. Andragogy, Knowles, big part of this class, right? Self-directed. Intrinsic motivation ties into this, what we just talked about. You are responsible for your own decisions. I believe that. I believe y'all are college students now. You have gotten away from high school mentality. I'm trying to move you away from that. I'm trying to blame everybody else for your learning or relying on everybody else for your learning. I'm going to tell you what's important. Now it's up to you on how you try to process that. I've given you all the tools in the world. So we do that at the beginning of the week. And then the second part of the week, how are you going to process that in a way that makes sense to you? That's where we're at. If you can get this down, your educational career will be streamlined. It'll be much more efficient. SMART goals. Changing behavior. This is more of a skill. Like you would see this in a skill-based class, but we can link it to theory because we've just been talking about goals and how they were linked to needs and Maslow's and all that. Extrinsic, intrinsic motivation. All that stuff ties in here to achieving your goals. It even ties in to the educational research piece that we talked about. So now we need to set goals based on whatever your research design was so that you can stay up to date and consistent, making sure that you're going in and achieving that goal of maintaining that experiment to try to change the results, whatever your hypothesis is. But the goals are to stay consistent, to make sure that you don't miss any days trying to get those measurements that you need, or so that whatever will change over that time happens, that you've done something, you've implemented a plan. So make sure your goals are specific, and they are. They're going to be specific to that research design that you did. Make sure they're measurable. They are, because you've taken a measurement at the beginning, and hopefully you take several measurements during the progress of it, but at least you need a pre and a post, right? A beginning and an end measurement. You have to have those two. Make sure they're attainable. They are. You can do all this from home. Make sure they're relevant. They are. They're relevant to what we're talking about, right? The educational research piece and the goals and motivation, intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, needs, all that stuff ties in. And make sure they're time bound. They are time bound, because after we get to the data-driven decision chapter module, you're going to take those measurements again. So there's going to be a start point and end point. If you're doing something on plant growth, you need to start it now. It has to start in the previous module. You had to have started it now. If not, you better get to it right now, because you need something to measure. Nothing personal. Remember, do something with plants. Fingernail length, hair length, I don't care. Implement some sort of plan. SWOT analysis. So now this can be tied to SMART goals. These two are connected. You normally see this in like business and education and leadership stuff, but we can tie it. And strengths and opportunities are kind of tied together. You can kind of link those. What are your strengths to obtain your goals? What are the opportunities? What are you going to learn from it? Is it going to help you out? Blah, blah, blah. What are the weaknesses and threats? What are your weaknesses? Are you task-oriented where you can keep up with this experimental design? What do you need to work on? Really need to focus on those so that they don't get in the way. And what are your threats? Maybe you're having problems with your work. You're having issues because now this is all online. What are your threats? What are going to get in the way of you doing this? You need to identify them so that you can neutralize them, so that when they pop up, you can deal with them. So that's what we're going to do for this lecture note, is you're going to create some goals based on your research design. So create a SMART goal. You can do a SWOT analysis on it, but really what I want you to do is create some SMART goals on your previous empirical research. So if you did exercise and nutrition, I would be careful with that one. I'd rather you do some sort of empirical research design that doesn't give any personal information. This one's really more for face-to-face classes where I can collect your data, unless you want to do something like fingernail length or hair growth based on nutrition. Maybe taking a multivitamin, you could do that. It's not anything personal. But I don't want anything like weight or girth measurements from you this semester. I don't want anything like blood pressure, any health-related information I don't want, because I don't want anybody else seeing that. Not that if you do it individually, that's fine. Just don't do it within your group. You could do these within your group. So you could say, all right, I'm going to change my weight and start an exercise program. Maybe I'm going to walk more. It could be simple. It could be something advanced. It doesn't matter. And then at the end of those 3 weeks, you really don't have a lot of time, but 3 weeks, you could safely lose 1 to 2 pounds in 3 weeks without the risk of burning up muscle. You could do nutrition, but if you do something where it's personal information, you're going to have to do it individually. I'll say it one more time. If you do something with personal data, you got to do it individually. Do not do this in your groups. All right, SMART goals. Hypothesis testing. Create a goal to help you stay on task to complete your empirical design. That's what I want you to do. How are you going to stay on task to see what influence your independent variable has on your dependent variable? You got to stay on task, measure throughout at least have a pre and post, but it would be good to measure throughout the next 3 weeks. So make sure you stay on task. And that's what your lecture note will be. Hopefully you follow along with your lecture notes. You can go into these, if If you want to, I've got them posted up. Make sure that you fill out all the questions here before you do the quiz, because it has some quiz related questions that'll help you out on your quiz, and then do your SMART goals for your empirical design to stay on task with that empirical research, and then submit this. You'll see the link